Welcome to Beyond the Needle, the Aesthetics Business Podcast. Each week, I'm here to share real, actionable strategies and bring on expert guests to help you level up, attract more patients, and build a standout brand. Let's turn your passion into a thriving business together. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Needle, the podcast where we talk about the business side of aesthetics in a way that's practical, honest, and actually useful and easy to implement. And today we're talking about content, but more specifically, how to plan and create your content in less than 6 hours per month without it feeling rushed, robotic, repetitive, or like you are constantly trying to keep up with a machine that never switches off. Because if you're an aesthetic practitioner or clinic owner, I know what content probably feels like for you. It feels like something that you should be doing more of. It sits at the back of your mind while you're treating patients, answering messages, ordering stock, sorting admin, managing staff, trying to have a life, and attempting to be present at home. You know that content matters, you know it helps people find you, trust you, and eventually book with you. But actually sitting down to create it often feels far more difficult than it should and that it needs to. You open Instagram, you stare at your screen, you think about filming a reel, then think maybe a carousel post would be better, then start overthinking what your audience actually wants to hear, then wonder whether anyone is even seeing your posts anyway, and before you know it, an hour has gone by and you still have nothing finished. And that is exactly why I wanted to do this episode, because creating content shouldn't feel like a second full-time job on top of the one you already have and the business you're trying to run. And it also shouldn't take over your evenings, your weekends, and every spare moment in between patients. The goal is not to spend more time on content. The goal is to make the time you do spend on it far more intentional, far more strategic, and far easier to manage. So today I want to walk you through how to plan and create a month's worth of content in less than 6 hours in a way that feels personal, still builds trust, still positions you as the expert, and still speaks to the real concerns your audience has. Now, a lot of posts or blogs or videos about creating content for the month will probably say something like how to create a month's worth of content in less than an hour, or how to create a month's worth of content in less than 2 hours. I wanted to keep this realistic. I personally don't think it's possible to create a month's worth of content in anything less than kind of 5 hours. Once you're really in a good rhythm of it and you really understand your audience and you have a good content bank of ideas, you could possibly do it in 3 or 4 hours. But I think when you think about all the things that go into creating content, like the videos that you're going to have to record and then edit, the copy that you're going to have to write for your carousel post, the captions you're going to have to write, 5 to 6 hours is a bit more of a realistic time frame to work towards and to talk about. And I think if you structure it so that you're giving yourself time every week to look at your content, you know, in the afternoon one day when you know maybe you have an admin day or a gap between patients or a bit of time at the weekend, it feels much more manageable. So when I say less than 5 to 6 hours a month, I'm not talking about pulling 20 polished pieces of content out of thin air in one sitting with perfect lighting, full glam, and a Canva masterpiece attached to each one. That's not what this is. What I'm talking about is building a system that removes the constant mental effort of starting from scratch, because that is the part that drains people the most and makes being consistent with content really difficult. It's usually not the writing that exhausts you. Often it's not even the filming, it's the deciding. It's deciding what to say, deciding what angle to take, deciding how to start, deciding if it's any good, deciding whether it sounds like you, deciding whether you've already said it before, deciding whether it sounds as good as that other practitioner who talked about that thing that you saw on Instagram last week. That is what makes content feel so time consuming. So the solution is not to become someone who magically loves content and can post effortlessly every single day. The solution is to create a framework that reduces the number of decisions you have to make. This is what makes content manageable. So let's start there. The first thing you need is not a content calendar. It's not a bank of hooks. It's not a list of trending audios or even more ideas. The first thing you need is a clear direction. Now, I want to be careful with how I explain this, because when people hear things like pick one focus, they often assume I mean only talk about one treatment or one concern or pain point all month long. That's not what I mean. And that would make your content feel repetitive and flat quite quickly. What I mean is that every single month needs a center of gravity. It needs a thread that pulls your content together, even if the actual topics vary. So instead of trying to talk about everything equally, you decide what you most want to be known, remembered, or booked for in that season of your business. That might be a particular treatment category. It might be a patient type. It might be a recurring concern you treat. It might be a shift in your messaging. It might be a business goal. For example, your monthly focus could be perimenopausal skin or full face rejuvenation or consultation-led treatment planning or building demand for regenerative treatments or attracting a more premium patient or simply strengthening trust with your audience before a treatment launch. That focus does not mean that every single post says the same thing. It means every post is orbiting a similar theme. So if your wider focus for the month is full face rejuvenation, one post might be about why treating a single area in isolation often leads to imbalance. Another might be about how you assess a face as a whole. Another could be a story about a patient who thought she needed jawline filler for her jowls, but actually needed structural support elsewhere, and why treating specific areas of her face led to this amazing, undetectable filler results. Another might be a myth-busting post about why more filler is not necessarily the answer. Another might be a gentle educational post about aging in layers and what is happening to the face as we age and why treating each area individually instead of focusing on specific features is often the way to go. Another might be a behind-the-scenes story showing a consultation in progress or treatment planning logic as you're marking up the face of a patient. You're not repeating yourself, and the content doesn't look like it's always talking about the same thing, but it's gently planting seeds in people's mind and leading them to a specific place. So if you want to be known for really natural, amazing full face rejuvenations, that might be some of the content that you look to explore and to create. And that's what strong content does. It doesn't jump around randomly. It builds familiarity through repetition of theme, not repetition of wording. So the mistake I see so many practitioners make is trying to cover their entire skill set in every 4-week period. One day they're talking about lips, the next day they're talking about polynucleotides, then they're talking about menopause, then skincare, then a teen post, then a random trend, then a stock image with a tip that sounds just like everyone else. There is no thread holding it all together and no clear direction or clear audience that they're trying to speak to, which means that people who are consuming your content get lots of information but very little clarity about what you really stand for and really anything that sets you apart. And when your messaging feels scattered, people struggle to place you in their mind. They struggle to resonate with it and connect with it and see you as the go-to person for them. So when you sit down to plan the month, I want you to ask yourself 3 things. Number 1, what do I most want to build demand for right now? Number 2, what do I most want to be known for right now? And number 3, what does my audience most need help understanding right now? Where those 3 things overlap, that is usually where your strongest content focus lives. And once you have that broader direction, the next step is to break it into content angles, because this is where your process starts to feel much lighter. So let's say your broader monthly theme is helping women in their 40s and 50s understand what is actually happening to their skin and their face. Within that theme, you might have angles like skin changes during perimenopause, collagen loss, structural aging versus surface aging. Why injectables alone are not always the answer, what good skincare can do and what it can't do, and why treatment planning should change with age. Already you hear how many directions that opens up. This is why your monthly focus needs to be broad enough to give you range, but specific enough to give you clarity in terms of who it is you're speaking to. If it's too broad, like just skin or aesthetics or aging, you will feel lost and your content won't really land or connect with anyone in particular. And if it's too narrow, like only one device or only one exact treatment, you may feel boxed in. What you want is a meaningful theme with multiple entry points. And from there, I want you to sort your ideas into 4 simple categories, because this is what stops your content feeling one-dimensional. So the first category is education. This is the content that teaches something clearly. It helps your audience understand a concern, a treatment, a process, or a decision. This is often the easiest type of content for aesthetic practitioners because you are already used to explaining things in clinic every single day. The problem is most people either overcomplicate it or make it too generic. The second is perspective. This is the content that shares how you think, your opinions, your standards, your approach, what you believe patients should know, what you disagree with in the industry, why you do things the way you do them. This is the category that builds authority fastest because it helps people understand not just what you know, but how you practice. The third is proof. So this is where you show evidence. Results, testimonials, case studies, patient journeys, before and afters, reviews, screenshots of patient messages, outcomes, common treatment plans, the logic behind a recommendation. This is the category that reassures people you can actually do what you say you do. And the fourth is connection. This is the piece so many people neglect. This is the content that makes you feel human, your story, your reflections, your values behind your clinic, why you care about certain things, what you've learned along the way, what matters to you, what you want patients to feel in your space. And then it can go beyond the clinic stuff as well and explore areas of your life that will resonate with your target audience. For example, if you're a parent, how you can connect with other parents who are likely going to fit into that target audience brackets. Or if you're a woman in menopause, talking about your own experiences with menopause, products that you tried, things that have worked with you, your experiences. Those things again are going to connect and resonate with your target audience. This isn't about oversharing, it's about helping people feel that there is a real person behind the business that gets them, that truly understands them. And when you create content across those 4 categories, your content becomes far more rounded, because no one books just because you're educational, no one books just because you're personable, and no one books just because you have before and after photos. People book when they understand you, trust you, relate to your thinking, and believe you can truly help them. So that is what your content needs to do. So now, instead of planning posts, you're planning maybe 3 or 4 educational pieces, 3 perspective posts, 3 proof-based posts, and a few connection pieces around your wider monthly theme. That alone is enough for a very strong month. And you can do that planning in an hour, maybe an hour and a half, if you sit down and truly think about what it is that your target audience wants to hear, the questions that you're asked in clinic. If you need a little bit of extra inspiration, looking at what works well for other people without getting into that rut of simply scrolling, doom scrolling, and completely procrastinating what you're actually supposed to be doing, or even worse than that, comparison. You don't want to start looking at what works well for different themes and different content topics for other people to get inspiration from, but then actually finding yourself comparing yourself to other practitioners, telling yourself you're not good enough, your content's never going to look as good as that person's, so there's just no point in doing it at all. If you feel like that is something that you do or would do, maybe stay away from looking at other content as inspiration and just simply thinking about what it is that your target audience truly wants to understand, those different ways that you can present yourself as a real expert in their eyes, that you can build trust with them, that you can connect with them on a deeper level and a more personal level, and just write those ideas down. Just write them down, get them out of your head, get them onto a piece of paper, get them onto your notes app, wherever it is that you feel works best for you. When you are planning, you just want to capture the concept. So don't sit there trying to write the whole caption or the whole post on the spot. Just write the working idea. For example, why patients often think they need filler when they actually need skin quality support, or 3 silent signs your skin is changing during perimenopause, or what I look for before recommending treatment in women over 45, or why I don't build treatment plans around one area alone, or a patient story about choosing subtle over obvious, or why they chose you over someone else, or what it was that led them to come to see you, or what I wish more women knew before starting anti-aging treatments or injectable treatments. That is enough. You're just building the skeleton. You just need to write those ideas down. And then when it's time to create the actual content, you're not starting from nothing. You're simply developing an idea that is already there. Okay, so now let's talk about creation, because this is the part most people assume takes the longest. But in my experience, content creation is only time consuming when you haven't done the thinking beforehand. When your angle is clear, your message is clear, and you know the purpose of the post, writing becomes much faster, or creating a video of you talking becomes much faster. So here's how I would structure it. You spend about 60 to 90 minutes at the start of each month deciding your theme, mapping out your angles, and sketching out your content ideas. Then you spend another hour or so building or topping up your content bank. And this matters more than people realise. You don't need a huge filming day. You don't need a videographer to come in your clinic every month. You don't need to spend a whole day creating carousels on Canva. You just need usable content. So in terms of videos, one of the best things you can do is start to build your B-roll bank. So getting clips of you doing things day to day, walking into clinics, setting up your treatment room, laying out products, typing notes, pouring coffee, opening stock, doing consultation prep, tidying your treatment trolley, mixing products, small snippets of your environment. Content banks are built from ordinary moments. They don't need to be special. They don't need to be professionally filmed. And the reason this matters is because when you already have the visual content sitting on your phone, creating content becomes much easier. You're not trying to invent a reel from scratch every single time. You are just pairing a strong idea with footage that already exists. This is also why I think so many practitioners are making content harder than it needs to be. They assume every single post needs to be perfectly polished, perfectly filmed, but it doesn't. A lot of the best content is simple. It's clear words, good positioning, relevant messaging, and easy visual support. that is enough. So if you've got your B-roll bank of videos that I just described, and another key thing that you should do is get some great photography done. So have a brand shoot in clinic or hire a studio space to get some lovely photos. When I say studio space, there's amazing like houses that you can rent for your brand shoots, which will really help them look a certain way if, in terms of how you want your brand to be presented and to be seen by people. It doesn't have to be, if you don't have a big clinic space, if you're just renting a room at the moment, that is an option. But the best thing you can do is get some photos of you treating, get some photos of you, some beautiful lifestyle shots, because when you've got those photos and you've got that video bank, you have assets there ready to work with, and you're not trying to find a stock image that doesn't look too stock imagey, and it's still not going to do well in terms of engagement, because it doesn't really it doesn't really connect with anyone. It doesn't show you or represent your brand in the best way. People buy from people. People want to see your face in your content. They don't want to see some stock image of a skincare product. And then from there, I would spend around 30 to 45 minutes each week turning a few of those ideas into actual posts. That doesn't need to be all at once if that doesn't suit you. It could be 2 shorter sessions, maybe 1 quiet evening, or maybe an admin block. But by that point, the heavy lifting has already been done. You're not asking, what should I say? You're asking, how do I want to say this one thing? And that is a much easier question to answer. So let's get into some very practical ways to make that writing or videoing process faster, because this is where people often lose time. The first is to stop trying to sound like a content creator and start sounding like yourself in clinic. And the easiest way to write better content or to film better content is to imagine a patient sitting in front of you and asking the question out loud. How would you explain it to them? What would you want them to understand? Where would you want them to start? What part are they most confused by? What misconception would you need to clear up first? That is usually your post, a real explanation in your natural voice. The second thing is to use repeatable content formats. You don't need a brand new content style every time you post. In fact, it's far better if you have a few go-to formats that your audience starts to recognize. A myth-busting post, a patient question post, a what I would do if post, a what I would look for. First post, a common mistake post, a before and after with context post, a practitioner perspective post, a personal reflection post. If you use repeatable formats, you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. You're simply dropping a new message into a structure that already works. The third thing is to stop overfilling your content. And this is such a big one because most practitioners know too much for social media. And I mean that as a compliment. You're highly trained, you understand nuance, you know that most concerns are layered and most solutions aren't simple. But if you try to say everything in one post, the content becomes dense, hard to follow, and difficult to engage with. Your content does not need to cover the entire consultation. It just needs to spark clarity. That means one strong point per post, one angle, one message, one takeaway. If there are 5 things to say, that is probably 5 posts, not 1. The next thing is to build from real life, because this is where your best content usually comes from anyway. What are patients asking repeatedly? What are they worried about but aren't saying clearly? What myths are you constantly correcting? What treatment decisions do people misunderstand? What complaints or frustrations come up often in consultations? What do people assume they need before you assess them? That is your content bank right there. You don't need endless inspiration from Instagram if you are listening properly in your actual business. And this brings me to something else that will save you a huge amount of time. Stop trying to create for everybody. When the content is slow, vague, or difficult to write, it's usually because you're trying to make it apply to everyone. You are trying to not exclude anyone, not to be too niche, not to sound too specific. But strong content usually feels specific. It sounds like you understand a particular woman at a particular stage with a particular concern. That is what makes people feel seen. So if your content is aimed at women in their 40s, navigating early signs of facial aging but wanting to stay natural, speak to that woman clearly. Don't dilute it and attempt to also speak to the 28-year-old wanting lip filler, or the 60-year-old wanting full face rejuvenation, or the man looking at skincare for the first time. When you're specific, it makes content easier to write and more powerful to read. Now, I also want to talk about frequency, because this is where people get themselves into trouble. You don't need to post every single day to grow. And if you're trying to do that whilst also running a business and everything else that goes with it, running a business, you will burn out very quickly and you'll get frustrated because you won't be able to maintain that momentum if you don't have support with it. If you're doing that all on your own, you need to post consistently enough that people remember you, and well enough that what you say actually moves people through the buyer's journey and moves them closer to booking with you. right? Because that's the end goal for most people. So for most practitioners, this could be 3 or 4 strong feed posts per week and some regular stories. It might be 2 very good posts per week if that's all you can manage right now. It really depends on your business, your capacity, and how supported you are. But the idea that success comes from constantly posting is what makes so many people burn out. It's far better to create a content rhythm that you can actually maintain than to post intensely for 10 days and then disappear for 3 weeks because you're exhausted. And that happens so much. This is like the most common thing I hear that happens to people, to business owners when they're posting on social media. So don't push yourself to do things that just aren't manageable for you. This is why 5 hours per month is such a useful constraint, because it forces you to simplify, it forces you to prioritize, and it forces you to stop overdoing it. And some of the best business decisions happen when you stop asking, how can I do more, and start asking, how can I do this better with less friction and in less time? So let me give you an example of how this could look in practice. Let's say your monthly theme is helping women navigate facial aging in a way that feels subtle, informed, and not trend driven. Within that, your educational post might be what changes first in the face during your 40s, why jowls are rarely just a jowl problem, how to tell whether your concern is volume loss, laxity, or skin quality, and the 3 biggest mistakes people make when treating jowls. Your perspective post might be why I don't believe in treating one feature in isolation, what natural results actually mean to me, 3 things the aesthetics industry is lying to you about when it comes to aging, 3 treatments that are a waste of money for treating jowls and skin laxity, and a story of a time that you said no to a patient. Your proof posts might be a patient case study with a subtle full face approach, a before and after with explanation of the treatment logic behind it, and a video testimonial from someone who wanted to look refreshed, not different, and now feels amazing in their skin and, confident, and how that increasing confidence has impacted their daily life. And your connection posts might be what I wish more women knew before they started aesthetic treatments, how my own view of aging has changed over time, your own treatment journey and the treatments that have had the biggest impact on your skin, controversial things I do as an aesthetics practitioner, things I'm still learning about myself as a woman in my 40s, and 10 years in aesthetics has taught me this about aging well. Can you hear how cohesive that feels without being repetitive? That's the difference. You're not posting randomly, but you're leading a conversation. And when you do that consistently, people start to understand exactly who you are for, what you believe in, and why they should trust you. And before we wrap up, another tip that I will give you when it comes to creating content in less time, that one of the best things you can do is have some pre-made templates on Canva that you can go and reuse, month after month. So you might buy a template pack. Now, there's some great places that you can buy beautiful templates from, like Tonic Shop, I love. Obviously, you do have your Canva pre-made carousel templates that you can get access to with the pro version of Canva. Some are even available in the free version. But just make sure that you really change these, because you don't want your content to start to look like someone else's or to blend in. You want it to stand out. But if you get some lovely templates and you have maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 7 templates that are branded to you with your brand colors and your fonts, that you just go in every single month and edit with the new topics and the new content and new photos and things like that, then it becomes much easier to create content, because you're not starting from scratch every single month. You've got those templates, they just need to be refreshed with new content. So that is one of the best things you can do, is give yourself the assets that you need to go in and create the content. Have the content bank of ideas that you've sat down and you've created in terms of the theme that you're going to explore or follow for that month ahead. Have your brand photos that you've had taken professionally with a photographer that really reflect you and your brand and what you want to put that out there in the best way, and will help you create content that feels personal to you, that looks unique, and that really stands out. Have that bank of photos, have that bank of B-roll content ready, though, of you doing those little day-to-day things that we talked about earlier. And then you've got a really strong starting point. If you've got all of those things, you've got your templates on Canva set up, 5 or 6 carousel templates. You've got so much there ready and waiting that you need to pick from, so it doesn't feel like you're completely starting from scratch. It feels far, far less overwhelming. then the only things you're going to need to create from scratch every single month are any talking videos you create where you're talking to camera. But you will take those ideas off of that content bank and just record them. And again, have an editing style that you repeat when you edit those videos in terms of transitions and title fonts and caption fonts, a music style if you've got music in the background. So give yourself these kind of templates to follow so you're not having to think of completely new ways to do things every single time. Now, before we finish, I want to say something about perfection, because this is a thing that really slows down almost everybody. If your content takes you forever, there is usually some perfectionism in the mix. You are constantly tweaking the wording, changing the covers, editing the reel again, rewriting the caption, worrying if it's clever enough, wondering if you've said too much or not enough, or the dreaded comparing it to somebody else's post. That's not a content problem, that is a self-trust problem. And the only way through that is volume and repetition. The more you create, the less precious you become, the faster you get. The faster you get, the more consistent you become. And the more consistent you become, the better your content performs over time. So please stop treating every single post like it has to prove your entire worth as a practitioner. It is just one piece of communication. Let it do its job and move on. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this episode. So I'm just going to quickly summarize everything we've discussed into one practical process. At the start of the month, decide your wider business direction and choose a core theme that supports it. Map that theme into multiple content angles so that you're not repeating one narrow point all month long. Create ideas across education, perspective, proof, and connection so your content feels balanced. Spend a small amount of time building a bank of simple, usable footage from your everyday clinic life. Like I say, once you've got that bank, maybe just top it up occasionally, but you've got it there and it's going to support you. Use repeatable formats so you don't have to reinvent how you create content every single time. Write like you speak, create from real patient questions, keep each post focused on one core point, and choose consistency over perfection every single time. Stop the comparison. Don't overthink it. Just do it. That is how you create content in less than 5 hours per month. Not by rushing or not putting much thought into what you're doing, but by making far fewer decisions, building stronger structure, and creating from a place of clarity instead of last minute panic when you realise that you've got nothing to go out that day. And that is what good content systems do. They don't just save time, but they reduce the mental load. And for clinic owners and practitioners who are already carrying so much, that is the most important thing you can do. If this episode made something click for you, I'd love you to share it with someone else who you think would find it helpful. Or simply just subscribe and follow along, and maybe leave me a little review if you want to. I really hope this has helped. As always, if you have any questions, you can go and find me over on Instagram at Bloom and Beyond Studio, and I will see you in the next one.